All right. So, part 3 of this video as well. I think maybe it's good that I'm doing it in parts so that it's not one long run through, but um, you can tap into it when you're ready for whichever part you want to take in. This is the one where I get a little more descriptive with my own experience to a degree. Um, so, when I was going through that process, understanding that something was not healthy for me, um, the steps that I suggested in the last video were exactly the things that I did. Um, I looked at things from a very logical and practical standpoint. I understood, how the brain works, how trauma bonding occurs, and how you have to fight against that. Um, but also how the chemicals in the brain work and how the brain responds to that, and how when we are in this dynamic, there is a high that's experienced. Absolutely, there is. I mean, there's going to be a physiological response. Um, and your brain is going to want to keep connecting with whatever provides it with a high. And when you are connected to a person, especially in the beginning, and especially once you start bonding, um, there's chemicals that are being produced, the feel good chemicals, the endorphins, and your brain loves that. Absolutely loves it. They're essentially a drug, they give a high. Um, and that's where we see people becoming fixated on other people. And, that's a part of things. That's not to say that there aren't soul ties that create like a sense of longing or a sense of home in the other person. That is 100% valid. But we also have to look at the human brain and being human, because we're still in a human vessel. And we can't discount aspects of just being human. So when you are approaching having to make that decision of this being unhealthy, and you have to take either a break or to step away from it completely, it's a hard decision either way. Um, but being practical about the steps that you need to take is going to help you to be the most successful if you find that this is just a really toxic, unhealthy situation for you, that it doesn't honor you. And perhaps this situation has gotten to a point where you were not honoring that person either. You just can't. Or maybe you're the one that has been experiencing the triggering and have, done some things that have kind of thrown a wrench into the situation. You're both going to trigger each other, like I said before. But when you're approaching the decision that you need to make as far as stepping away, um, making it practical and understanding, okay, this is going to be hard. You're going to have to accept that it's going to be hard. I think some people can at times think, well, if I just stay pissed off enough, this is going to propel me to cut things off and be fine. And you can kind of speak from a place of anger and resentment. Totally normal. And you can use that as a fuel in the beginning. And in my experience, I totally did. I was pissed off. I was fed up. I was in a space of saying, you know what? I'm not doing this. But also there was something that was brought up with me to where I literally thought to myself, I have been through so many different traumatic experiences. I have fought so hard, even just to physically survive. I've had a hell of a road. I'm not going to let somebody piss on me. I don't give a fuck who they are. This isn't happening. Like, this is not happening. I don't care who they are. And I made a promise to myself that I was going to step forward, because somebody had to keep a promise to me. And that person was going to be me, because I could rely on myself to make that promise and keep that promise. So I started out with anger and resentment, but also practicality. I knew that my brain really liked those chemicals, but those chemicals were really staving off with the change in treatment that was being witnessed. And suddenly there was more anxiety there, more not so good feelings there that were replacing those happy, warm, fuzzy, great endorphin type chemicals. And when you've moved from that state of feeling that way into dealing with anxiety and confusion and wondering, why did that person just snap at me? Or why is this person changing so much? Why am I being treated this way? Why am I suddenly being disrespected? And, you go into this space of your brain adjusting to the situation at hand. And so it's not going to create cat hair. It's not going to create those endorphins. Instead, it's going to start going into that fight or flight state, and you get cortisol, the stress hormone, and definitely adrenaline at times. And that's not healthy for you. So on a physiological health level, you are experiencing hormones that are not healthy for you if you keep experiencing them. And so it's not only unhealthy emotionally for us, where we are not feeling emotionally safe with that person anymore, but your body is also incurring stress hormones, and stress hormones do damage to the body. So you may even find that when you are stepping forward out of that situation, that you're incurring headaches, stomach aches, you might feel physical soreness. And these are just the ways that the body is dealing with essentially a fight or flight state that a lot of people move into when they have to make that decision. And I will say for myself, specifically for myself, and referencing my own journey with that, most of my life, because of the trauma that I had incurred, taught me that I couldn't rely on other people, particularly the people that were charged with my care. I had to look out for myself emotionally, physically, and I was definitely in situations where my life was being threatened, my physical safety was threatened. And so when you were put in those situations, you learn very quickly that nobody's coming to save you, nobody's going to help. And so you have to figure things out as a 5, 6-year-old child, a 19-year-old woman, a 26-year-old woman. You learn that nobody else is coming to your rescue. You have to be your own knight in shining armor if you can. And so most of my life, I have been very much a lone wolf, very hyper independent. And I think the people in my life that have tried to love me have definitely seen this aspect of me that runs around and tries to take care of it all, because if nobody else does it, it isn't going to get done. If I'm not looking out for my safety, nobody else will. If I don't love me, nobody else will, kind of thing that I learned. And that's an old tape that runs. And a lot of times those of us on this journey have been through those situations, very much so, through trauma that we've incurred in our lifetime. But myself, I became like a hyper independent wolf. And so most of my life, I have not let many people get very close to me. My jam is helping people and digging into being a hostess and being very hospitable and dishing out love to other people. But there was always this with me. I never wanted to leave anybody behind or make them feel like they weren't loved or cared for. I didn't want them to feel the way that I felt the majority of my life. And so that has led me to overextending. And a long time, I felt that if I overextended, that dictated my worth, that gave me some worth, and that made me lovable. It didn't. It just invited in people that really loved that attention or loved what I was doing for them, but that was the only reason that they were there. So it opens you up to things, but being someone who basically holds themselves very wired tight, and only lets people get so close, when you live encapsulated like that your whole life, and then you meet that person that cracks you open, you don't even realize that you don't want to be there in that state that you've been in your whole life anymore. And you slowly find that your defenses are coming down. And, over a long period of time, when you've lived in that encapsulation, what happens when you find that you're not in a healthy situation? And now you're being required, because the situation has now changed, when you were making efforts to move out of being a hyper independent lone wolf that you've always been. The challenge for me was being in the woods one day and thinking, so now that I've made this dedication to myself to get up from the table, I know that I have to, I'm forced to go back into being that hyper independent person. and to go back into that encapsulation. That was scary as fuck for me. First time in my life that I have ever been afraid. Um, to go into a space that was familiar to me my entire life. So that was the added challenge that I dealt with. Um, I forced myself to do it. I forced myself, and it was really hard. There was a massive grieving process. There was anger, confusion, all kinds of really tough feelings, and also this fear and the immense sadness that I knew that that state came from going through a lot of trauma, that I developed that as a survival mechanism, and now I was being forced to go back into it. Um, and for the first time in my life, I didn't want to. That there was such a sadness for me with that, but I forced myself to do it and went back into it, although I am in this time of my life learning a better balance with it. But it stripped me down again. And in life on this journey, you will be stripped down multiple times. You're probably not just going to go through one dark night of the soul. I've been through 3 so far, just completing my 4th. You know, it's a continuous state of evolution, and these connections that I'm referring to are meant to really shake you up, take the box that your life is in, turn it upside down so that you can sift through it and see all the things that aren't working anymore, that haven't worked for a really long time. You have to embody the courage to look at it. And sometimes when that box is turned upside down, the next aspect is realizing that the person that helped turn that box upside down has served their purpose either for the time, and for some people, this lifetime. So I think we've been feeding a lot of people a lot of lies on this journey. I think every journey is different and unique because every person, every soul contract is. Not everybody has the same role. Not everybody else has the same journey. The way that you get along on this particular road when you find that you can't stay in this dynamic anymore is to have the will to emotionally survive making those decisions and walking forward, because I do understand that there is usually trauma bonding and enmeshment taking place. And it's going to be traumatic. We have to acknowledge that that separation, that decision is traumatic, because there is trauma bonding, because it's playing on the trauma from your life. It's tied to the trauma that you've had in your life. It's creating new trauma. But you have to have the will inside you to make decisions for your health and your well-being. And again, like I say, if love is not being served at the table, get up from the table. I don't care who is sitting on the other end of that table. I don't care who. You have to love yourself in this lifetime. And nobody, really nobody, can love you better than you can love yourself. And sometimes getting up from the table is how you teach someone else how to love you. Okay? So I think I've rambled on enough, but what it comes down to ultimately is having an iron will to do what you need to do for your health and well-being, no matter who that person is. And yes, that is a part of the journey. This is about you. This journey is about you. It's not even about the other person. They're a player that has a giant puzzle piece for you. But this journey is about you. Okay? This is about you uncovering your most authentic self and growing and leaving behind the things that don't serve you and healing yourself. And I know that's not the fun, fluffy, endorphin-filled, drug-like haze that gets glorified. But if you're on this journey, you didn't sign up for the easy stuff. You didn't sign up for the drug-filled haze. You signed up to meet yourself in this life as you are and to learn to love yourself, okay? So, to my friend, I wish you the absolute best on this journey, and I'm so thankful that you suggested this video. I love you. I believe in you 100%. You will be okay. And I know that you have an iron will. All of us do. Okay? I love you guys.